Adam, to kick things off, I want to challenge something that you said last week. We were talking, or actually, I guess 2 weeks ago at this point, the last time that we talked about this particular bootleg series, volumes 1 through 3. Obviously, we're going like disc by disc, volume by volume, and we were calling attention to the fact that Volume 1 was like 3 years of his career, and then Volume 2 was like 11 years. And we talked about how there's no John Wesley, there was no like Nashville skyline. And you said something to the effect of like maybe this set wanted to highlight, Dylan's better known albums or the music in his catalog that everyone knows and loves and reveres. And oh man, let me tell you, I like several songs in this collection, in disc 3, volume 3, whatever you want to call it. But most of this I could do without. Like I don't particularly care for like the Christian trilogy as just like something to listen to casually. I will listen to it. It's not that I dislike it, but it's not something that I'm going to go pursue actively often over something like Blonde on Blonde or Blood on the Tracks. So to have like Slow Train Comin' and Shot of Love and Infidels outtakes taking up most of this, I would have much rather have had John Wesley Harding and Nashville Skyline and other stuff that we've gotten later in later bootleg series releases. But here on the first set, they're giving us all these, again, gospel era trilogy, or we've said before that Infidels is sort of like the fourth album in that set, so to speak. And these songs, I think, even show that more abundantly when you have songs like Lord Protect My Child, for example. So what do you think about that? How did you think or feel when you saw disc 3? What are your thoughts?
Well, I've just counted of the 16 songs, I like 13 of them. But I'm much more into kind of later Dylan than you are, I suppose. And I do think as well, disc 3, to go back on what I said, I mean, I don't remember saying that, but I'll believe you, I said it. I get very little sleep, Jens. But I do think disc 3 seems to actually almost be the reverse of what I've said, so I may take it back. But it might be quite trying to highlight, because like Infidel, Shot of Love famously didn't do very well critically and commercially, even though a lot of people now have retroactively agreed that Shot of Love is actually a fucking banger and it's a great album. Infidels was kind of seen as a return film, but obviously nowhere near the highs of earlier in his career. And Empire Burlesque No Mercy also didn't perform like amazingly. And so it almost seems like this might be trying to help people reevaluate those albums potentially. And also, to me, this reads like a list of songs of basically like Dylan trying to say, "Hey, I've still got it." If I remember in 1991, where he's going through a bit of a career slump and he hasn't written anything new for a while. Well, no, so he's just released Under the Red Sky. He's not going to release any kind of self-written stuff for another 6 years going forward. This does seem to be like a kind of list of Dylan showing off, essentially, in the best way of like, actually, I still have this kind of stuff like under my hat.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not that I dislike it. It's not that the songs are bad. I like a lot of the songs, and having paid special attention to them, over the last week or so, I did come to like some of these songs that previously I didn't really care for. But it's still like none of these pale in comparison to some of the epics that he's written, and even some of the stuff that has been on volumes 1 and 2. Um, I don't know. I think maybe one place to start is just by getting into the songs here. Obviously, at the end of Volume 2, you start to have a few songs that are on Blood on the Tracks. The first song on Disc 3 is another Blood on the Tracks alternate take before we move into Desire outtakes. But If You See Her Say Hello is a really strong way to start this particular this disc, this volume. I would actually go so far as to say that I prefer this alternate take even to the version that shows up on Blood on the Tracks.
Mm, yeah, I'm gonna default to my sitting on the fence answer I always do, which is like I like anything from Blood on the Tracks. Like it's difficult to say which is my favorite. It also very clear that this wasn't intended to be kind of three separate volumes. I know it was released as volume 1 to 3, but kind of in my head I've always thought it was like they had volume 1, 2, and 3 and just bundled it together. Whereas so we've done it where we've split it out into each episode. But the fact that disc 2 ends with Blood on the Tracks and disc 3 starts with Blood. In fact, that same thing happened with 1 as well, wasn't it? It ends with times and goes. So
Straight into it,
that's
yeah.
a really, really strange thing that I think we mentioned this on the first one, but I just want to highlight again. Like, why did they do volume 1 to 3 to begin with? It's like they almost didn't think they had enough to go forward with. And now on volume 18, but it's almost like they were trying to like kind of run before they could walk and kind of going like, oh, this is volume, because this could easily be volume 1, couldn't it? Volume 1, rare and unreleased. Like this is no longer than most of the bootleg series. It's very strange to just straight away do 1 to 3.
It kind of feels like the same. I think we made mention of this too, but if not, we'll say it now. It's kind of like the Wilburys when they released their albums. That's volume one, and then volume three, there is no volume two. Like those are just the names of their only two studio albums. So maybe it's Dylan being a little tongue in cheek, but one does have to wonder how much did he actually know or plan? Like in 1991, or maybe let's just even say 1990. Maybe that's when he started compiling this collection. Who knows? I mean, I'm sure he didn't foresee still doing this in 2026, for example.
No, and I also can't imagine he'd have had kind of control over the track list or anything like that, because there's so many songs here which for years people had asked him to release and he'd said no, which we're going to get onto some of them now. Um, just ones that he wanted to keep locked up in the vault, and then he eventually releases and people go, oh, this is one of your best ever songs, Bob, you should start playing it live. So if we go from If You See a Sailor, which, okay, I agree with you, amazing take. I can't necessarily say I like it, or it depends what mood I'm in, if I like it better than the other one, but I mean, it's one of the best songs of all time, so any version of it is going to be good. We then get three Desire outtakes. So first is Golden Loom, which is, I like it. I think it's a good song. It would be kind of a middling song on Desire, I think. It's not Abandoned Love. Very few things are. But it's still got that infectious Desire sound. And if we said this last time we did the outtakes on the old podcast, which is if you took Joey off, you could fit in 4 songs. And you could fit in Abandoned Love, Golden Loom, Catfish, and 7 Days, which we're about to talk about. So I do kind of still wish Golden Loom had been on Desire. I think it would have fit in really, really nicely. But again, it's one of those nice things we keep talking about, like these nice outtakes that you find on these bootlegs where you're like, oh, that's a really cool song. I kind of see why I didn't include it on the album. Like I said, Golden Loom's nothing to write home about. But it's one of those songs that I really, really like, but it's not going to change your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't have much to say on Golden Loom or Catfish. I mean, I think they're strong
Well,
songs.
Catfish,
Go
I
ahead.
have something to say on it. Just
Sure, go for
2
it.
things to say. One, we spoke about doing this in the past. This is going to be a lot of callbacks I'm about to talk about. We talked about doing this past, which was an episode about um, the people Dylan chooses to write songs about.
Yeah,
Because Catfish, which he wrote with Jacques Levy, who obviously wrote Mr. Desire with the playwright. Catfish was a baseball player who wasn't particularly famous. He wasn't like Babe Ruth or someone like that. He was,
right.
I forget who he played for. It wasn't even like the Yankees or the Red Sox. It was like a smaller team. I think it's still an MLB team, but like a smaller team. But Dylan chooses to write a song about him, and it's this very like, I really like that. It's one of those songs I kind of forget about, and then when I listen to it, I really like the slide guitar. It's kind of, so this leads on to my second part, sorry, which is, and I said this last time we spoke about the song, it sounds like an early version of Blind Willie McTell to me,
Agreed.
in that it has the kind of same refrain, kind of, no one could throw the ball like Catfish can, and no one could sing the blues like Blind Willie McTell. It's got this New Orleans kind of dirty Delta sound, like you can almost hear like a slide guitar and an eagle screech. And it's a really weird fucking song, really weird. But I quite like it. However, I don't think it would have fit on Desire.
Not well, or at least not as it wouldn't have slotted in as easily as perhaps even Golden Loom. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because it doesn't have Scarlett Rivera's violin. It doesn't have Emilio Harris on it, whereas Golden Loom and Abandoned Love obviously do. Catfish sounds like it's from. It's almost weird that it's from Desire, because I used to think, for some reason I used to think it was from Blood on the Tracks, because it just kind of has more of that kind of sound. But yeah, it would have been weird if you'd gone from Mozambique into Catfish or something like that.
Yeah.
It would stand out.
Well, and obviously, like hindsight is 2020 or whatever. We're talking from the perspective of this being an outtake and being left off the album. Maybe we'd feel differently had it been included on the original cast of Desire. But to talk briefly about 7 Days, also, what is it with Dylan and songs with the number seven? Seven Curses, 7 Days. We've talked about other songs where the number seven shows up pretty repeatedly. When I first was listening through to this set though this past week, I got to 7 Days and I was like, what's the deal with this live song out of nowhere? Like I had kind of forgotten the context that 7 Days wasn't ever really recorded in the studio. There's never been a take that we've committed to even another bootleg. So we have this obvious live recording. And so looking more closely at it, I saw that it was first played in concert on April 18th, 1976. And then it got 5 outings. It was played 5 times before that it was dropped from the list. But then almost let's see, almost 20 years later exactly, so again from April 18th 76 to April 19th 96, it suddenly starts reappearing. He plays it 13 times and has never played it again. It was last played on June 29th 1996. So this is just one of those weird songs that like I didn't really know much about. Apparently he tried to offer it to Eric Clapton and George Harrison, both of which turned it down. Apparently Ronnie Wood of the Rolling Stones eventually picked it up as a song to play. So I don't know. That's a weird little oddity for this to suddenly show up when otherwise it hasn't been all that popular of a song.
Yeah, I think I said again, we're talking a lot about what we spoke on the Desire episode, but I remember posting this to Instagram as well that 7 Days was played more in '96 than it ever was in '76, which is really, really strange. There's some good video performances of it being played in '96. There's one in Liverpool, which is very good. And I think it was mainly in Europe he played it as well, which again is kind of strange. I think it's an amazing song. I think it's a really Rolling Thunder song. And we've been teased that there's going to be a Desire bootleg series for quite a while now, and I'm desperate for there to have potentially been a studio recording of 7 Days. Um, but I really really like the song. I wish he'd played it more. I wish it had been included. I wish he'd gone into the studio. I think it's a really really good song, and it kind of almost perfectly suits the Rolling Thunder sound. And I also really like at the end of this song, it just stops.
Yeah.
It just stops and there's like a brief moment where the crowd do nothing because obviously I think they're like, what is this? And then Bob just goes like, thank you.
Yeah.
And then they suddenly break into applause. But like, I know what you mean though. It's odd because it's the only live song. So there's no live songs on disc 2. That's right. Yeah. There's a couple on disc 1, nothing on 2. Then again, this one here. And also, if we're talking about like songs that Dylan's written, then only played in concert a few times, there's actually quite a number of them.
Oh yeah.
So it's odd that he'd choose, but certainly ones that he'd written and hadn't included on an album, let's say. So it's odd that he'd choose 7 Days to release. And like you said, Ronnie Wood did record it for an album. I don't think it was like a massive hit though. I don't think it was well known. But then what's weirder is that Dylan, after 5 years after the Bootleg series comes out, then decides to reintroduce it into his concert. So it's not like it gained massive popularity from the Bootleg series, because why would you wait 5 years? And not only that, because it's 1996, he doesn't play it anything like the fucking 1976 version. Anyway, it's unrecognizable. But he's a weird guy. The whole thing where if you ever read Ray Padgett's books, or when you see interviews with Dylan's Neverending Tour Band, he kind of does just walk into a room and go, "Hey guys, let's play 7 Days tonight," and they're like, "What the fuck's that, Bob?"
Yeah. Well, it's
heard
fun.
of that, mate.
It's so funny to like we've talked. I hate that we keep doing callbacks, but we've talked in the past about the idea.
This episode only makes sense if you've listened to every episode.
Yeah. Just like so much of Bob Dylan. But no, seriously, like obviously there's this thing of us probably never actually getting to talk to Bob Dylan. I don't think he'll ever come on the podcast. It's not like we're ever going to run into him in the wild. But like in the fucking off chance that we somehow do, this is the kind of stuff that I genuinely want to ask him. Like if he'd be willing to answer those questions of like, how do you make those decisions? Was it even you? Like, was it Jeff Rosen? Was it somebody else on his team? Or maybe even with the label? But yeah, where does a song like 7 Days come from when it's otherwise, I guess it is a rare and unreleased collection. I get that. But to your point, why pull it out and then sporadically play it live to, not play it for the last 30 years now? He hasn't played this in 30 years.
It's the same, but that Desire's a weird one with live performances because Romance in Durango was played in 75 and 76 and dropped entirely, then played once in 2003 and then never again.
Naturally.
The only kind of the only Desire song that's continuously been played is Joey. Again, weird. But Joey in
Why?
the 90s, Joey in the late 90s was actually quite good. It was played a lot faster. But Hurricane, he didn't play because Reuben Carter got out of jail and then kind of did some domestic violence, and I think Bob kind of backed away at that point.
Distance himself.
One More Cup of Coffee was played a bit. Sarah obviously wasn't playing. I mean, Sarah would be a really weird song to play post divorce. But yeah, no, Desire seems to be even despite with fans. When it was the anniversary recently, the amount of people who saying it was his best album and stuff, and it's in my top 10. I know it's just outside your top 10, or it was last time we spoke about it. But like, Desire is a beloved album, but to Bob, it's not. It's again, this isn't the Desire episode, but maybe like he's divorced, like maybe doesn't want to relive that, coked off his fucking nut,
Yeah, maybe.
as well. Probably can't remember it. But anyway, let's skip ahead. So the next song, we don't have anything from Street Legal. And as far as I'm aware, there's only 2 outtakes from Street Legal, which I sent you. When I made that little bootleg of,
Yeah.
there's 2 outtakes on that, which are very good. And then we get to a Slow Train Coming outtake, which is Ye Shall Be Changed. Long-time listeners will know I'm not a religious man. I'm kind of an anti-religious man, let's say. Unless we're talking about Hellenism, then I'm right on board with that. But I do like the religious trilogy, especially Short Love, like I said earlier. But Ye Shall Be Changed kind of summarizes the stuff I don't like about the religious trilogy, and just this one song. If someone was like, what don't you like about the religious trilogy? I'd play them this song. Like it's kind of saccharine, sweet, kind of white man's soul pop with very, very nasal vocals and incredibly repetitive, vapid, vacuous lyrics
Yeah.
that are kind of preaching but also aren't. That like it's almost like either commit or don't. But yeah, it's this is the worst. No, I'm gonna hold that back. But this is one of the worst songs on the entire bootleg for me.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I will say too, the transition from 7 Days into this song is fucking jarring. Because not only, as we said, there's that weird, like the way that 7 Days ends, but also going from 7 Days and the live style to
It's
suddenly
gritty as well. Like
yeah,
that's gritty, and then Ye Shall Be Changed is so just
tinny.
not. It
Yeah.
sounds like Veggie Tales or something. But Slow Train Coming, it's amazing songs on there. And when it's kind of like weirdly kind of going towards reggae, and obviously Knopfler's guitar and stuff like that. Slow Train Coming is a good album, but this is another thing that crops up with the bootlegs, which is you go, all right, I see why he didn't include this, and this is one of
Yeah.
those. But it's also a weird song to choose for this volume because then on later volumes, like on volume 13, Trouble No More, you get some more Slow Train outtakes, which are so much better. And they're actually like good songs. And it's weird that he chose to release this as like an example of one of his. Presumably, they chose these because they were the best outtakes. Because this is the first volume. You'd assume that. So
You'd assume. I mean, it's either
yeah,
that
no.
or he's foretelling the coming of Kanye and Kanye's change.
Oh, yay, shall we changed. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not a very good song as far
Yeah,
as I'm
I will say
concerned.
I do much like a lot of the Christian trilogy. I do like the instrumentation. Like the actual instrumentals are killer and top notch. It's just the fucking like I can't get over the cheesy Bob Dylan Christian stuff.
Yeah, and especially, but there is some stuff that has the bite. There is songs that have that kind of, when he's almost like going a bit more fire and brimstone preacher. I quite like that. Or, but that's why I don't like Saved in particular. I think it's just, we've said it before. Again, this is again the callback episode. But when he boxes himself into only singing about one subject, it gets incredibly dull and repetitive as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But the next song, which on the freewheeling episode, you asked me if like my top, I said Hard Rain was probably his best written song, and you said what would it be competing with, and I said It's Alright Ma and Every Grain of Sand. And the next song is the Every Grain of Sand demo, which isn't as good as the final song, I would say.
Obviously, that's easy to say.
um, but it's one of those nice songs where you can hear the evolution of the song. You can hear how it started, and with you knowing what the song becomes. I do think that's another fascinating part of Bob's Bootleg series. As much as we all love hearing tracks we've never heard before, what's also really cool is hearing the evolution of how they started. So this was the demo was recorded, sorry, in 23rd of September 1980, and then Shot of Love wasn't recorded for another 8 months. So it's quite cool to hear how it was sounding to begin with and where it went to and then what it became, especially as like being quite an important song to me. And yeah, so it's cool to hear the demo, but it's not as good.
No, agreed. And I don't necessarily think it's even supposed to be. If nothing else, it just shows in this instance, actually, I think how little the song has changed in the time that it took from demo to studio cut. I mean, there are other songs where you hear the demo and then the studio cut, and it's night and day difference. But at least this retains most of the sound and the structure and most of the
Yeah, yeah.
lyrics. I think the primary
Just
difference
sounds
being
unfinished, doesn't it?
no, totally unfinished, unpolished, but I like Jennifer Warren's backing vocals. I really like, and that's one of those weird things with Dylan. Obviously, I think people struggle to harmonize with him because he doesn't sing in a way that most people tend to. So it often sounds like somebody's struggling behind him to try to keep up or keep pace or even understand where he's going. But at least Jennifer in this instance seems to have it down.
I do think Dylan purposely tries to throw people off who's singing with him. We're going to get onto When the Night Comes Falling from the Sky, but I remember reading someone who said about it, it's like Dylan's given the backing singers different lyrics, and they're suddenly realizing that they have to try and follow what he's saying because it's he just seems to be purposely changing. Like when he sings with Joan, like Joan can obviously like follow him, but he does still like do odd turns of phrase or come in at a slightly different part or something. And he's either just a dickhead, which arguably, or it's just like for his own amusement of like, how can I make this more interesting for myself? I'm
Yeah, I
gonna be a
mean,
dick.
it kind of seems like it. I don't know what else to say, but to transition to some of these other Shot of Love outtakes, it is interesting that like we just completely skip saved. Apparently, there's nothing worth saving from that session, but you get like three consecutive Shot of Love outtakes. You have "You Changed My Life," "Need a Woman," and "Angelina," and I don't know. Anytime I see something like "Need a Woman," I feel a little bit like cringy and there's something within my soul that recoils a little bit, but I find it funny that Dylan has a song called Angelina. He has a song just called Farewell, and then separately he has a song called Farewell Angelina. And I'm curious if there's some sort of weird trilogy or some sort of deeper meaning going on there, or if he just likes the words farewell and Angelina, or if they work well in rhyme or in meter or something. But it's at least worth calling that out.
I think Angelique. So by the way, the other two songs I have literally nothing to say about. And
Same.
I think You Changed My Life and Need a Woman are both just. I'm glad they weren't on Shot of Love. Angelina, though, I have a lot of time for. So there's this version. There's another version that was on Trouble No More. Um, it seems to me like it was a writing exercise for Dylan to kind of show off his writing chops, especially during a period where his writing was being called into question. Um, you know, it rhymes concertina, hyena, subpoena. Like I think Angelina, because it's 4 syllables and it ends in the ina suffix, then he can do a lot of rhymes with it, which I think might be
Yeah.
why he likes it. But I don't think he rhymes. Farewell Angelina doesn't rhyme with the word Angelina, though, does he? So maybe he just does also like the word Angelina, or the name Angelina, rather. But yeah, and I think Angelina's a pretty good song.
Agreed. I like he has
Just from a
he has a
writing
line.
standpoint.
No, totally. And he has a line here. I'm curious if you think it's autobiographical or if it's not. That's always the game to play with Dylan. But he says it's always been my nature to take chances. Do you think that that's autobiographical? Do you think he's being honest?
Um, my right hand drawing back while my left hand advances. Yeah, I think I don't know if he's necessarily being autobiographical, but it could be without meaning to, that he is also describing himself, I suppose, because you got to remember at this period of his career, he is critically kind of being slammed. People are walking out of his. I mean, people have always walked out of Dylan concerts. That still happens today, being disappointed. But people had gone expecting kind of Rolling Thunder 2, or Rolling Thunder 3 by that point, actually, and got him on stage preaching and, singing. There was a period of 18 months where he only sang Christian music. He didn't sing any of his old songs. And so, he believed it so much that he was willing to essentially tank his career. So, you know, that's probably taking a chance. I think we're all very glad. Imagine if he just never got out of the religious era and it was 2026 and he just announced, the Shot of Love for like 45th anniversary or something like that tour, and like was still just going out and singing Dead Man, Dead Man and Slow Train Coming or something. Like, we're very lucky he got out when he did.
I mean, we obviously can't know, but I would like to contend, and I do believe that had he remained in that world, that he would not be remembered as well today. I think he would have burned enough bridges, and he would not have revitalized his career at any point in the late 80s or mid 90s or even into
I
the
think he'd be remembered
2000s.
as that. Be remembered as that guy who went crazy, like
The
that guy who
folk
put
the,
out
the
like
folk
some.
protest artist who then converted to crazy Christianity.
Yeah, it'd be like, oh, that guy made Blonde on Blonde. Remember that? And then he went and by the way, I want to make it clear, we're not saying that being Christian makes you crazy, but what we're saying is like this: if he just stayed only doing that music, I think yeah, we would not have a podcast about Bob Dylan.
At
There
least
wouldn't have been a
not a good
film
one.
about him. So then we move on to coming out of Shot of Love, move on to Infidels. So Infidels gets quite a big treatment here. We get 5 outtakes just from Infidels alone. And then since then, we've also got a bootleg series almost entirely focused on Infidels. So first, I'm going to recommend the book Surviving in a Ruthless World, which was Infidels' initial title. I'm recommending a book without remembering the author's name, which is pretty shitty of me to do. So, Jens, why don't you talk about the first song whilst I Google the author's name?
Yeah, I genuinely don't have much to say. I mean, Infidels is one of those albums that I can hardly ever listen to. Again, I'll listen to it when I have to do, a complete discography playthrough, but it's not one that I'm going to seek out and just like have on for fun. And like I feel like this is a few too many outtakes. I like Foot of Pride. I like Tell Me. Obviously, Blind Willie. I don't even necessarily even think of Blind Willie McTell as an outtake from this session, even though that it is. Um, but I don't know, man. Like I still to something we've said before, it just really does feel like another Christian album, despite the fact that it technically isn't one of the 3 Christian albums that he put out in the early 80s. But man, I don't know, like someone's got a hold of my heart. Lord protect my child. I'm just not even really that into.
The author's name was Terry Gans, by the way. So someone's got a hold of my heart. I think it's interesting only because it's an early version of um fucking the Empire Bless song. What's it fucking called? Has anybody seen My Love? Tight Connection to My Heart.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's way better than Tight Connection to My Heart because it's not got horrible 80s synth and backing singers. I don't mind that one. All the I do think Lord Protect My Child I could do without. And like you, I really like Tell Me. I really like Foot of Pride. Really, really like Foot of Pride. Um, and then Blind Willie McTell, as you said, is kind of its own thing. It's from a different like
It
dimension,
feels,
that song.
I was gonna say, it feels like it's from a different world.
Um, but all it does, all the Infidels outtakes always remind me of is just how shit Infidels is and how good it could have been. Like I would take Foot of Pride, Tell Me, obviously Blind Willie McTell, and Someone's Got a Hold of My Heart over probably 4 tracks on Infidels, and that's not even counting songs like Too Late. I like Julius and Ethel. I like I can't remember the other ones, but whenever I listen to Volume 16, Springtime in New York, almost every Infidels outtake and alternate take, I'm like, this is so much fucking better than what we got. Why is he putting on fucking Union Sundown and Neighborhood Bully and all that shit when you've got Foot of Pride? The chorus on Foot of Pride is phenomenal, and Lou Reed covering it at the 1993 Dylan anniversary concert is really, really good as well. But yeah, I think we'd be remiss to not talk about Blind Willie McTell just because it's kind of stands as this weird bastion in Dylan's career of this is the go-to answer of, Dylan's outtakes of what should have been included in an album, which, and even though me and you gave different answers where we say, Pretty Sour or Abandoned Love or Moonshine or something like that, the kind of background answer is always, well, obviously Blind Willie McTell, but I'm going to say something different to be more interesting. Because this is going to sound really obvious, and people listening know this, and you know this, and I know this, but every time I listen to it, which isn't that often, because I almost think, oh, I know that song's good. I'm not going to, I'm going to listen to someone else because I know how good Blind Willie is. Whenever I listen to it, you're like, oh, he is just the best ever, isn't he? Like he just is. Like if you need proof, and not that anyone listening to this needs proof, but the way it starts quietly, the build up, his singing on it, and it's in this period where he is struggling with his singing, I would say, is at that nasal apex. His writing, he's, as much as I really like Slow Train, and as much as there are some good songs on Infidels, like his writing's not kind of what it was, I don't think. I think he's having some form of block, or at least is taking some form of downturn. Then he bangs out Blind Willie McTell, doesn't put it on the album. It disappears for a long time until the band cover it. It gets renewed interest. Dylan puts it on this and then starts playing it live. And it's just, I think anyone else in all of history would have written something and recorded something like Blind Willie McTell and gone, this is the greatest thing I am ever going to do. I'm going to get Blind Willie McTell tattooed on my fucking head. And all I'm going to talk about is how I wrote Blind Willie McTell. And Bob said he didn't like the way he sounded and therefore didn't include it. It's mind blowing. You said if you wanted to ask him like about what songs, and this would be, I think I'd have to like just pin him down and be like, right, fucking Bob, why didn't you include it? What's your
Yeah.
beef with Blind Willie, mate?
No, seriously. And God, we haven't even made mention of this. I think most people back in 1991 when this came out, contextually, may not have even been aware of most of these other outtakes. Most people probably didn't even really care all that much. Like, I think casual Dylan fans weren't all that into his Christian era, but there had been all these, lingering rumors and murmurs about like the song existing called Blind Willie McTell, and it's amazing and it's in the vault. I remember even reading an early version of one of Paul Williams' books, like one of the first in that like 3 or 4 part set. And, like he makes mention of it when he's talking about stuff that's, in the supposed vault, stuff that's rumored to exist that no one's ever heard. So most people, I'm imagining, this is what they ran to. I'm saying like they got the record, they got the cassette or the CD or whatever, and they sprinted to whatever medium they were going to play this on and had this at full blast. And can you imagine having never heard Blind Willie, maybe only knowing the rumors about it being great and hearing it for the first time? Like, yeah, you probably were left thinking, God, Bob, what were you thinking? Why would you have left this off of Infidels, an album that most people were, you and I are Dylan obsessives, but I'm saying most people do not like Infidels. Most people probably don't know that
Well, don't even
Infidels
know him.
exists.
Yeah.
Right. So like to listen to this, it's just it's almost infuriating. And I think like my like conspiracy theory brain wants to believe that like maybe somebody's pulling strings on Dylan somewhere and making his career take all these twists and turns and whatever. Because otherwise, like I tend to think that Dylan's pretty smart, that he has like a good ear and eye for what should be on an album. But the fact that this was left off feels blasphemous to me.
Well, we always say he's his own worst editor, and this is the prime example. It's one of those things, like you said, when I first heard it and I loved it, I couldn't get my head around, the idea that it was an outtake because I was just listening to it. I didn't have to wait to hear it or anything like that. But like when someone tells you a TV show is good or a movie's good or a game's good or whatever, or an album's good and the reviews are amazing, and you listen to it and it's you didn't care about it that much. But this is like, if you really wanted to hear Blind Willie tell you've been salivating like, oh, there's this rumored song, and then you listen to it, and it's better than you ever could have fucking imagined, because there's no way anyone expected Blind Willie McTell to sound like that. To say it's an Infidels outtake, you'd be expecting the reggae drums, RIP to Sly, who died recently. You'd be expecting the calypso sound, the really nasal voice, the still quite religious lyrics, and then you get this piano and kind of minimalist guitar song that's like we said about Catfish is kind of like drenched in New Orleans. Like Dylan's walking you down like a back street. Um, and the picture he paints is just amazing. The longing in his voice, like it's an all-time song. Like it's easily a top 10 Dylan song, I think, easily. And he goes, don't include it. Whilst I'm critically derided, don't include one of the best things I'm ever going to produce. It's infuriating.
Well, I've got this little 7 inch. It was like a record store day release way back
Yeah.
when. And side one is this first version, Blind Willie McTell Take One, features the normal Infidels band, but it also includes Take Five. So it's not like Dylan tried this once and was like, nah, he at least gave this 5 takes. And this is the one that shows up on Springtime from New York that features Mark Knopfler, for example, on guitar. And even that version's incredible. So it's not like there's just like a it's not like Dylan could have said, well, I tried it one time and I really didn't like it, such as Farewell Angelina, another song that we're just eternally perplexed as to why he recorded it once. It's incredible and then he never revisits it. But at least this one, he put several versions down to tape and still concluded, nope, that one's going in the vault.
Well, that makes me think that he couldn't get the sound in his head out if he's trying, because also those two versions are incredibly different.
That's true.
It's not like it's slightly sped up or something. That one's way more on the piano. So there's clearly a sound in his head that he wasn't achieving. And I will say as well to anyone listening, if you haven't seen it, in 2012, Dylan appeared at like a Martin Scorsese AFI event, honoring Scorsese because obviously they worked together on No Direction Home and then later would work on Rolling Thunder. And fucking Dylan, man, he chooses to play Blind Willie McTell, his most famous outtake. But again, most people in the room would not know Blind Willie McTell. And the he's kind of saying that whilst no one can play the blues like Blind Willie McTell, Scorsese's the Blind Willie McTell version in the direct word, which I think is a fair comparison. But the version is unbelievably good. Like Dylan's got that howl, but it works, like the raspy kind of coyote sound that he has at that stage in 2012. And it's just an absolutely phenomenal performance. And I recommend it to absolutely everyone listening. Dylan, Blind Willie McTell, 2012 AFI event for Scorsese.
Maybe we'll try to include that in the email blast.
Yeah, because it's just, it's just phenomenal. Is it 2012? I'm not second guessing myself. I think it is. I'm going to say it is. I said it with so much confidence I can actually take it back.
Well, while you maybe double check, we'll move on here to the Empire Burlesque alternate take. I mean, again, I would love to talk to whoever helped compile this list. This is not one of the takes that I would have chose to include. I don't even really have much to say about it other than the fact that like every time I read when the night comes falling from the sky, I think of that one too many mornings line of like when the night comes a fall and the dogs will lose their bark. It's just like something triggers in my brain. But do you have anything nice to say about an Empire Burlesque alternate take?
One, it was 2012. I was right to go with my gut.
Proud of you.
Thanks, love. Again, with you on the choosing this version because there's two far better versions on Springtime in New York, like a slowed down version and a more rocky version. I will say the actual song itself on Empire Burlesque, which we'll talk about when we eventually fucking get there. I actually quite like how camp and shit it is. It sounds like the intro music for a really terrible 80s detective show. Whereas this version's maybe a little bit more earnest, and I think that actually takes away some of the charm. But again, I can't imagine anyone was shouting out for an Empire Burlesque alternate take of a song that wasn't even like that popular. It's again another weird choice, especially with the outtakes and the alternate takes that are from Empire Burlesque, which do show up eventually, but are far more interesting and make the album seem a lot better. But then we move on to what I will say, outside of Blind Willie McTell, is probably the main reason for disc 3, which is Series of Dreams, which is an outtake from Oh Mercy. For me, this is one of my favorite Dylan songs.
Dang.
Like, I adore it. The drums coming in, it's 89, but he's still looking back on his career. The videos, have you seen the music video for it?
I don't think so.
It's it's quite emotional. It's only like footage of him from his younger years, but set to the
Oh,
music, and
I have seen it.
yeah, and it's like it's genuinely quite emotional as he's like talking about this series of dreams and things that haven't come true and stuff like that. And it's but again, he's then been going for another nearly 40 years. So it's that funny thing of Dylan looking back and then actually still just continuing on and still going now. But I think it's an amazing tune. And Oh Mercy is one of my favorite Dylan albums, but there are two songs on there that I don't like, and Series of Dreams and the other famous Oh Mercy outtake, Dignity, could have easily slotted onto the album. And originally, Daniel Lanois wanted the album to open with Series of Dreams.
Hmm.
And Dylan said no, he wanted Political World to open the album, which I don't mind Political World, but I mean, for Bob Dylan, it's a bit on the fucking nose. It's not like he's talking about, in euphemisms or similes. He's literally saying, yeah, everything's about politics, which it is, but that's not very Dylan-esque. And the song's okay, but opening with Series of Dreams, especially when you can tell with that fade in of the drums, like it's clearly an opening track, clearly should have been the opening track. And I don't often agree with Daniel Lanois and stuff, but he was correct here. This definitely should have opened it.
Speaking of fade-ins, that's interesting to consider because the only other fade-in I can think of on a Dylan song, do you know what it is to open an album?
Changing the guards.
Yeah, very interesting. It's not something that Dylan does often, like fade-ins and fade-outs. Another question to ask you related to this. I see here in the notes that this was remixed in January
Mm.
of 1991. So I'm wondering if it was like a rougher outtake originally, or if there was some reason, 2 years later, as they're getting ready to release this compilation, if it needed to be remixed for some reason. But have you ever heard the what I would, I guess, call the original mix?
I don't know because and there's another two versions, one of which I think is this version on volume 8. There's definitely an alternate take, and then there's this one again. And so I'm not sure if that's remixed as well, but it's potentially could be that it's just, I mean, almost every Dylan album is recorded horrifically. Like he does not seem to care about how it sounds. So it doesn't surprise me if it was remixed. It was then also included on Greatest Hits Volume 3 along with Dignity, with that funny thing that Dylan does with Volume 2 as well, where it's his greatest hits, so he chucks on a lot of songs no one's ever fucking heard before, which isn't exactly what a greatest hits is meant to be, Bob. Um, but I think this definitely deserves a place to be on a greatest hits. I think I mean, do you like the song?
I do. No, I love this song, and I only have five song highlights from this particular disc, and this is one of them. But I don't know, to call back to that line from Angelina of like it's always been my nature to take chances. Like maybe that's what Dylan does. Like when he's doing the album sequencing. Like maybe there are some songs where he's literally like I could go either way. You could take it or leave it. And so he just takes a chance. He goes with his gut, only to have, many successful gut takes, but then other times, Blind Willie and Series of Dreams and others where it's like, man, you really missed a mark in that regard. But I'm curious as
Maybe he's a
we
genius who thinks to himself, hold on, if I don't include this, then in 25 years' time, I could release a bootleg series. And maybe it's just like just actually a marketing.
just wizard.
Yeah, and he just goes like, "No, leave Blind Willie McTell off because I'll tell you what, in a couple of years there's going to be a thing called CDs, and we can release volume 1 to 3."
And it's going to be gold. But let's wind this
Oh,
down a
sorry, just
little bit.
before we wind it down, sorry, I wanted to recommend in 1993 he played Series of Dreams live in Japan, and it's a beautiful, like genuinely beautiful performance. He's not played it live very often, or I think only a handful of times. But yeah, you can see it on YouTube. It's actually filmed as well, like someone in the audience films him playing it, and it's amazing. Yeah, well worth checking out.
Nice. Well, we've done this with each of these that we are able to. I'm curious. Obviously, Blind Willie feels like it doesn't even need to be mentioned because that's just the obvious one. But in your estimation, what are the craziest outtakes? Meaning, which songs should have been on their respective album?
Okay, so I'm gonna Blind Motor, yeah, and Series of Dreams. I'm just not even gonna, but that's just obvious. I would have put on Golden Loom. I probably would have put on Desire just because it just sounds so much like Desire. I'd have put on Angelina on Shot of Love, and I'd have got rid of Lenny Bruce or Trouble because I don't like those songs. And I'd have put Foot of Pride on Infidels. Like, I probably would have put Tell Me on Infidels as well, but definitely Foot of Pride would have gone straight on there for me. And they, to me, it's just so obvious that they should be on those albums that it's infuriating that they aren't. And also, if 7 Days had been a studio recording, that would have gone on Desire as well. But
Yeah,
we'll either never know or hopefully know soon.
and that's what we didn't mention this when we talked about it a little bit ago. I'm curious, like 7 Days is one of the only songs that we have from 1976 proper. Like this is after the release of Desire, if my math is correct. So it's like it's possible he had it written in time for Desire, and we have maybe never heard that studio version, if it even exists. But it's interesting to think about. Like we don't have much from 1976 from Dylan that isn't live, and it's curious to wonder what might exist between Desire and Street Legal, for example. Like if there's a secret hidden album.
Cold. You know the I'm Cold sessions? Do you know that?
Is that which one is with like Clyde King?
Oh no, so that's a little bit later on. No, the I'm
Okay.
Cold sessions are Dylan recorded a couple of songs about Sarah
Oh
that
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
so horrific that the studio techs like got rid of the tape or burn it or was like, you can never fucking release this. And so I don't think that I think there was a few years ago there was something about it, but it was just unlistenable. Not as in like horrible to hear, as in like just sonically was fucked. Um, and I think it's probably a good thing. I wouldn't want to hear Dylan like really ripping into Sarah, especially like knowing what that marriage was like. But then he seems to have kind of starting to try and work through it by street legal, so it's probably good. But yeah, it's odd that there is actually quite little between there, but too busy finding Jesus or something, wasn't
Something. He's on the road searching for that missing piece of himself. But I don't know. To answer the question I asked about outtakes, I do think it'd be funny if Catfish had been on Desire. Obviously, it doesn't fit, we said, in the same way, but it would be nice to have that standing out, or maybe even replacing Joey. Another song about a real person. Um, I think I would also add Angelina. I would also add Tell Me and Foot of Pride and Series of Dreams as well. And I don't know, that also feels kind of like my song highlight from this collection. We got If You See Her Say Hello, Golden Loom, Tell Me, Series of Dreams, Blind Willie. I mean, these are exceptional songs on an otherwise, in my opinion, pretty weak disc in this volume one through
it? It's the
three.
weakest of the three. I think
Absolutely.
that's just the it's so bunched up. This is what kind of I was saying about the albums that aren't included. Is by the time you get to volume three, it stretches from 76 to 89, so 12, no, 75 to 89, sorry, so 14 years, where we know how much stuff was there, and I understand they're not going to chuck it all on for the first release, but they do seem to kind of gloss over the latter half of his career at that time, as opposed to the first half, which I do understand, and there's obviously a hell of a lot to get through on the first half of his career. But yeah, volume three, I think just naturally is weaker, but Willie McTell by itself makes up for that. And like I said, there's some alternate takes and shit that you just wouldn't give a shit about regardless.
Yeah.
But to include them is a bit annoying. So now that we've done all three, and just because we've kind of like run through that, I'll like put you on the spot here. They don't have to be one off each volume. What are your top three songs from the entire bootleg? Like
Oh
they could all be
man.
from volume one or volume two. Like you don't have to spread them out, but like what would you say is the
That's
quintessential that people have to hear from this?
okay. Okay. God, this is gonna be hard. I feel like Let Me Die in My Footsteps is one of them. That's just like simply one of my favorite Dylan songs. So we'll go with Let Me Die in My Footsteps, Farewell Angelina, and Blind Willie. I don't know, that it's so hard. I could have picked three from disc one, but that feels like too easy. So picking one from each disc makes that a little bit better. So Let Me Die in My Footsteps, Farewell Angelina, and Blind Willie. What about you?
So I'm going to think of this as like if I was a Dylan fan in 1991, what would I be most excited to hear? I think I know it's hard to
Sure.
kind of think that, but so I think I'd go Moonshiner.
Oh,
I know it's a traditional, but
it's so
it's just
good.
Moonshiner, isn't it? I'd probably go I Shall Be Released, especially in 91 if we haven't got the basement tapes yet. Well, the full basement tapes yet. That would be amazing to hear because again, that was long rumored and no one had heard it. And I'd go Blind Willie McTell as well. Like you can't escape Blind Willie McTell's orbit when you're talking about Dylan, like outtakes and bootlegs. It's the sun at the center of the bootleg system, I think, and everyone else is orbiting Blind Willie McTell, but that is just the bastion of Dylan's kind of cutting room floor.
And I'd like to hear from the people listening if they've made it this far too. Like if you were to pick 3 songs from this volume 1 through 3 collection, what are your top 3? And if you were there, if you were around in 1991 and aware of this release, how excited were you? Were there particular songs that like you were very excited for that disappointed? Were there songs that you had no idea about that like blew your mind? Like I just want to know what it was like. Like I really wish that I could have been there for this release because I don't know. I feel like I missed out on some cultural Bob Dylan moment or something.
Yeah, and I wish I'd been around in 1991 because housing was affordable. What do you think, before I let you go, what's the worst song on the entire volume collection? I'm going to
Oh,
take out stuff like Talking Having a Gala Blues and Sue's the Cost song because they're not real songs.
okay.
Like, what song could you really, really do without?
Really, really, really do without. Okay.
I'll go first. I'm just going to pick Need a Woman off Short Love. I just think it's such a nothing song. Even before we get into the title and the lyrics, I just think it's like you shrug your shoulders when you hear it.
Yeah. It has to be something from this disc. I'm just double checking real quick. I don't know, that or like
It
Lord
could
Protect
easily
My
have been You
Child or
Shall Be
something.
Changed. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
or that. Something one of the like Shot of Love, Slow Train, like one of the Christian songs I think could easily be slotted out. But if you were to like exclude those, because they are just sort of bottom of the barrel in my mind, I kind of want to like maybe get a little bit spicy or something and say
Well, after saying that, I just want to quickly say, Shall Love, there's an outtake called Caribbean Wind, if no one's heard.
oh
Um, it's one of my favorite Dylan songs by a long way, and should have been included on this to show off how good Short Love could have been. So I don't want to shit on Short Love too much because I do really like the album.
yeah, I don't know if I
There
could
we go.
pick anything
He's
else.
trying.
Like
Oh, he's
the only other thing I
trying
could
to be
say is
spicy, isn't
something.
he?
Well, I was gonna be spicy and say like the Subterranean Homesick Blues take just to make you mad, but it's like
Oh,
it's not a real opinion that I hold. Um, so I don't
I
know. The
suppose
only other
the alternate take of When the Night Comes Falling as well, so kind of I don't care about.
that could be. I think the only other one that I would remove in my explanation is just because like I'll keep it with mine. Like trying to listen to that version from the Blonde on Blonde session. I genuinely, I'm so glad that that's an outtake. I'm glad it didn't show up on the album. Like maybe he could have eventually figured it out, but the fact that he tried at 3 different albums, like on 3 different album studio sessions, he tried to do this song and couldn't do it. To me, I think it just like is indicative of it's a little bit beyond him somehow. I don't know what to make of that, but if I was to get a little bit spicy and pick one of the songs that isn't on disc 3, I think that'd be the one I would exclude.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I'd probably just go with the Like a Rolling Stone alternate take because of the voice crack that happens at the very beginning. And as we said last time, it just sounds wrong. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily wrong, but it just sounds like, no, that this isn't the song, Bob, play it properly.
Man, but I'm so excited to get into the rest of the bootlegs. Like I'm kind of glad that this first collection is
Like
behind
an
us now.
albatross,
And
isn't it? Around the
yeah.
neck, and like we can break free. And now we're going to start getting into Columbia's real greed as they only focus
Oh,
on 1 year, but charge you $180 for a special edition that comes around and slaps you in the face or something.
hell yeah. Well,
Oh, but people listening, next time we do a bootleg series, volume 4, the Royal Albert Hall concert, which has your Free Trade Hall in Manchester, you will hear my most embarrassing moment of my life, which happened at Free Trade Hall because of this album. So that's
ooh.
something to genuinely, it was so embarrassing that sometimes my wife, Han, just starts chuckling to herself. And I say, "Oh, what are you thinking about?" And she goes, "I'm thinking about that thing that happened to you at Free Trade Hall." That's how bad it was. Genuinely the worst moment of my life. So that's worth sticking around for.
I don't even know if you've told me this story before, so I'm just as
I
eager
maybe
as
haven't,
everybody
yeah.
else. So don't tell me now and don't tell me when we stop recording. I'm excited to hear that in real time.
But if you've enjoyed this episode, tell people about the Substack if you want. And yeah, just thanks for listening. Next week we'll be back with a free one for another side.
Oh,
Until then,
be
be groovy,
groovy.
Olive.
And thanks for paying for the pod.
Oh yeah, cheers for that as well.
That was pretty quick.